Let's be honest, The Fellowship of the Ring didn't just change fantasy films, it basically rewrote the rulebook on how to adapt beloved books into cinematic gold. This first installment of Peter Jackson's epic trilogy took us from the green hills of the Shire to the depths of Moria with such immersive detail that we all briefly considered moving to New Zealand and building hobbit holes. But behind those 3 hours of orc slaying, ring-bearing adventure lies a production story even wilder than the journey to Mordor itself. Today, I'm counting down 14 strange, surprising, and downright bizarre facts about the Fellowship of the Ring that even the most dedicated Middle-earth enthusiasts might have missed. So grab your second breakfast and let's dive in, because this journey's about to get weirder than a conversation between Gollum and his reflection. Number 14. The Elvish Earpiece Epidemic. The Elven language scenes created such pronunciation challenges that several actors wore concealed earpieces during filming. These audio aids allowed dialect coaches to feed them line readings in real time without disrupting the flow of complex scenes. Liv Tyler, who played Arwen, reportedly struggled the most with Sindarin pronunciation and kept an audio recording device hidden in her costume for particularly complex scenes. According to production sound mixer Hammond Peak, there was a near disaster when Tyler's receiver accidentally picked up a local New Zealand radio station during the emotional Arwen's Gift sequence, causing the actress to hear sports commentary instead of her lines. Even more amusingly, the extras playing background elves weren't provided with the same language training as the principal cast. Instead, they were instructed to simply mimic the mouth movements of the main actors while actually whispering recipes for New Zealand desserts. Next time you watch the Council of Elrond scene, just imagine all those dignified elven extras secretly murmuring Pavlova instructions. Number 13. The Harvey Weinstein Ultimatum. Before New Line Cinema rescued the project, The Lord of the Rings was developed at Miramax under Harvey Weinstein, who infamously delivered a stunning ultimatum: condense the entire trilogy into a single 2-hour film or lose the project entirely. According to Peter Jackson's longtime producer Jamie Selkirk, Weinstein's proposed cuts would have eliminated entire characters, including Saruman and Galadriel. One particularly outrageous suggestion reportedly involved combining Aragorn, Legolas, and Boromir into a single composite character to streamline the narrative. The breaking point came when Weinstein presented Jackson with a script rewrite that opened with a prologue narrated by Galadriel, which survived in the final film, but then immediately jumped to the Hobbits already possessing the ring and fleeing the Shire from generic Dark Riders with no backstory. Can you imagine Lord of the Rings with no Bilbo, no birthday party, and no explanation of what the ring actually is? Number 12. The Olympic Training Regimen. The actors portraying the Fellowship underwent what they dubbed Rings Boot Camp, a grueling pre-production training program that included everything from sword fighting and horseback riding to wilderness survival skills. This wasn't just basic stunt preparation, it was an immersive method acting approach designed to forge authentic camaraderie among the cast. What few people know is that these training sessions were secretly monitored by behavioral psychologists hired by Jackson. These observers were analyzing group dynamics to help the director understand how to capture authentic fellowship bonds on screen. According to Swordmaster Bob Anderson, the training intentionally included challenging group exercises where actors had to rely on each other, mirroring their character's journey. Orlando Bloom, playing Legolas, took this preparation to extreme levels. Reports suggest he practiced archery for 2 hours daily for 3 months straight, eventually becoming proficient enough to hit targets at impressive distances. Meanwhile, the Hobbits were given slightly different training to subtly reinforce their outsider status within the group. Have you ever noticed how the 4 Hobbit actors often naturally cluster together even in scenes where it's not scripted? Number 11. The Almost Animated Epic. Before Peter Jackson entered the picture, The Lord of the Rings was nearly transformed into an animated feature by none other than John Boorman, the mastermind behind Excalibur and Deliverance. In the 1970s, Boorman envisioned a single, condensed film that would have blended live action with ambitious animation techniques. What's especially wild? His script reportedly contained a scene where Frodo and Galadriel engage in the Midnight Tango to represent the passing of the ring's power. Yes, you read that correctly. Can you imagine how differently the franchise's entire legacy might have unfolded? The script was ultimately deemed too expensive and too bizarre, even for 1970s Hollywood, but elements of Boorman's vision later found their way into his Arthurian epic Excalibur. Why does this matter? because it reminds us how perilously close we came to a Lord of the Rings that shared more DNA with Ralph Bakshi's polarizing animated take than the masterpiece we eventually got. Number 10. The Reno Connection. The script for Fellowship was partially written in a modest hotel room in Reno, Nevada, where Peter Jackson and his writing partners, Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens, holed up to escape distractions. According to production diaries, they covered the walls with hundreds of post-it notes mapping out the story structure and character arcs. Hotel staff reportedly thought they were plotting something illegal or running a gambling scheme based on the chaotic wall displays and their unusual hours. Some even claimed that the famous "You shall not pass" line was first written on a Reno hotel napkin at 3 a.m. after Jackson had a vivid dream. Here's the kicker. These writing sessions were actually unauthorized by the studio, which was still pushing for a single 2-hour film rather than a trilogy. Jackson was essentially developing his trilogy vision on the side while officially working on the condensed version. Wild, right? Why it matters. This rogue writing approach resulted in the expansive world building that fans adore, proving sometimes the best creative work happens when artists follow their instincts rather than studio mandates. Number 9. The Stuart Townsend Saga. Stuart Townsend was originally cast as Aragorn and spent 2 months in pre-production, training extensively and even filming some early scenes. Then, just days before principal photography officially began, he was abruptly fired and replaced with Viggo Mortensen. The official reason given was creative differences, but reports suggest the real issue was that Jackson felt Townsend, at just 27, appeared too young to convey the gravitas needed for the 87-year-old Ranger. Others claim Townsend's interpretation was too lighthearted for the brooding air of Isildur. What makes this especially painful? Mortensen was famously cast with virtually no preparation time. His son was a Tolkien fan who convinced him to take the role, and he reportedly flew to New Zealand immediately, sometimes reading the novel on set between takes to understand his character's motivations. Ever wonder how different the trilogy would feel with a younger, possibly more dashing Aragorn? The swap fundamentally changed the film's tone, giving us the weather-beaten, reluctant hero whose transformation from Ranger to King became one of the trilogy's most compelling arcs. Number 8. The Sean Connery 7 million. Sean Connery was offered the role of Gandalf along with a staggering compensation package, $6 million per film plus 15% of the trilogy's total box office profits. Had he accepted, Connery would have earned approximately $450 million for the 3 films, making it potentially the most lucrative acting job in history. Connery famously declined, later admitting, "I never understood the script. I read the book, I read the script, and I still didn't understand it." The role, of course, went to Ian McKellen, who transformed Gandalf into one of cinema's most iconic characters. But here's what few people know. Connery's confusion wasn't isolated. The early drafts of the script were so dense with Tolkien lore that several other established actors also passed, claiming they couldn't follow the narrative. Did the producers dodge a bullet with these rejections? Why it matters. McKellen's performance as Gandalf earned him an Oscar nomination and cemented the character in pop culture history. Sometimes the most expensive option isn't the right creative choice, and Connery's rejection ultimately gifted us with the perfect Gandalf. Number 7. The Disney rejection that changed everything. Before New Line Cinema gambled on filming all 3 Lord of the Rings films simultaneously, Peter Jackson shopped his project to several major studios, including Disney, who rejected it for being too scary for our audience. What's particularly fascinating is that Disney executives allegedly said the Ringwraiths would traumatize children and suggested replacing them with less frightening adversaries. One insider claims they proposed colorful dragon-like creatures instead of the Black Riders. Yep, the rejection turned out to be a blessing in disguise. When Bob Shea at New Line Cinema heard Jackson's pitch for 2 films, he famously asked, "Why make 2 films when the book is a trilogy?" This unexpected response led to the 3-film structure we know today. Think about it. Had Disney said yes, would we have gotten the same visceral, sometimes frightening adaptation? The trilogy's darker elements set a new standard for fantasy filmmaking that acknowledged younger viewers without pandering to them. That artistic integrity might never have survived in the House of Mouse. Number 6. The meteorological magic trick. The New Zealand weather was so unpredictable during filming that Jackson employed a full-time meteorologist on set. This weather wizard was tasked with predicting optimal filming conditions and helping schedule outdoor scenes accordingly. Despite this preparation, the weather frequently wreaked havoc on production. The Fellowship's attempt to cross the Red Horn Pass, for instance, was filmed during a freak heat wave. Those scenes of the hobbits struggling through snow were actually shot in scorching 90-degree Fahrenheit temperatures, with actors sweating profusely under their winter costumes while surrounded by imported artificial snow and ice. Even more incredible, the flooding scenes at the Fort of Bruinen had the opposite problem. They were scheduled during New Zealand's dry season, but unexpected torrential rains caused the river to swell to dangerous levels. The production team actually had to reduce the water flow for safety reasons, then digitally enhance it in post-production to create the dramatic flood that sweeps away the ring wraiths. Why does this meteorological madness matter? It showcases the incredible adaptability of the production team and explains why the trilogy's outdoor scenes have such authentic environmental diversity. They weren't just filming in changing locations, but also in genuinely unpredictable weather conditions. Number 5, the $1 Million Weight Loss Program. The production spent nearly $1 million on creating smaller scale duplicates of almost every set, dubbed Hobbit scale and human scale, to achieve the illusion that hobbits were significantly shorter than humans without relying entirely on CGI. Some sets had trapdoors and specially designed trenches, allowing Gandalf to stand next to Frodo while appearing much taller. Other scenes used body doubles and complex split-screen techniques. In fact, for scenes where hobbits interact with big folk, many shots required filming the same sequence twice on different scale sets. What's particularly bonkers about this approach? For consistency, the art department created detailed measuring documents for every single prop. A hobbit-sized mug in Bag End had to be precisely 0.72 times the size of a human mug in Bree. This attention to detail extended to doorknobs, chairs, tables, food, and even the cutlery used in feast scenes. Does anyone else find it amazing that in a film with Balrogs, giant trolls, and magical rings, some of the most convincing special effects were achieved with nothing more than clever carpentry and forced perspective? This practical effects approach has given the trilogy a timeless quality that pure CGI productions often lack as technology advances. Number 4. The Linguistic Deep Dive. The production hired linguists and created over 40 hours of instructional tapes to teach the cast proper pronunciation of Tolkien's languages. Dialect coach Andrew Jack, who later worked on Star Wars and Game of Thrones, developed specific accent profiles for different races and regions of Middle-earth. The Elven languages received particular attention, with Cate Blanchett spending weeks mastering the precise musical cadence of Sindarin for Galadriel's speeches. According to production notes, the actors playing elves were instructed to speak with slightly elongated vowels and flowing sentence structure, while Dwarven speech was characterized by harder consonants and abrupt endings. What's fascinating is how these language distinctions subtly reinforce the cultural differences in Middle-earth. Ever notice how the hobbits all have slight West Country English accents while the men of Gondor speak with more formal, almost Shakespearean inflections? Why does this linguistic attention matter? It created an immersive world where different cultures truly feel distinct, not just in appearance, but in communication style. This linguistic world building has influenced countless fantasy productions since, setting a new standard for creating authentic fantasy cultures on screen. Number 3. The Birthday Armor. Viggo Mortensen was so committed to authentically portraying Aragorn that he insisted on using real steel weapons rather than lighter aluminum or rubber props during fight scenes. He reportedly slept in his costume for days before major sequences and went hunting in New Zealand forests while in full Aragorn gear to make the weather look more authentic. But what few people know is that Mortensen's dedication extended to his personal life as well. According to cast interviews, he celebrated his birthday during the filming of the Weathertop scene, and his birthday gift from the weapons department was a set of custom-made replica weapons that became his personal property rather than studio items. Now, here's the truly wild part. Mortensen performed his own stunts in the Weathertop battle sequence where Aragorn fights the ring wraiths, sustaining a real injury when a knife was accidentally thrown at his face. The take where he deflects it with his sword is the one used in the final film. No CGI, no stunt double, just actual combat reflexes. This matters because that raw authenticity comes through on screen. When you see Aragorn trudging through mud, swinging swords, or tracking enemies, you're watching an actor who's genuinely living in that world rather than simply performing in it. It fundamentally changed how actors approach fantasy roles. Number 2. the miniature that wasn't so mini. The massive cityscape of Minas Tirith that appears briefly in Fellowship and more prominently in Return of the King was built as a physical miniature model, except miniature is a serious misnomer. The detailed model stood 14 feet tall and 19 feet in diameter, containing over 1,000 tiny buildings with intricate architectural details. So meticulous was this creation that the miniatures team, nicknamed the Big H'er department, actually included working brass door hinges smaller than a pinky fingernail on the main gate. Reports suggest that when winds in the Wellington studio became too strong, the tiny flags and weather vanes on the model city would genuinely move and had to be reset between takes. What's particularly fascinating? The team carved individual roof tiles and cobblestones that wouldn't even be visible on camera just to ensure realistic light diffusion. Does that level of invisible detail sound like madness or genius? Why does this matter? In an era increasingly dominated by CGI, Jackson's insistence on physical models, enhanced with digital effects, created a tangible weight and presence that computer-generated environments often lack. This approach fundamentally influenced how fantasy worlds would be built for decades to follow. Number 1. The secret screening. Weeks before the film's premiere, Jackson secretly screened an early cut for J.R.R. Tolkien's son Christopher without the studio's knowledge or permission. This was particularly tense because Christopher Tolkien had publicly opposed the film adaptation and refused to be officially involved in the production. According to sources close to the production, Jackson was terrified of the author's son's reaction, considering him the true guardian of Middle-earth. The screening reportedly lasted over 4 hours, including unfinished effects shots and temporary music. What happened next has become something of a legend among the cast and crew. While Christopher Tolkien never publicly endorsed the film, sources claim he sent Jackson a private letter containing both criticisms and reluctant praise. The exact contents remain confidential, but crew members report that after reading it, Jackson made several subtle, last-minute adjustments to the edit. Some speculate these changes included reducing certain comedic elements and restoring several small character moments that had been cut for time. The studio executives were apparently never told about this unauthorized screening or the subsequent edits. Why does this secret screening matter? It represents Jackson's commitment to honoring Tolkien's legacy even when it meant risking studio displeasure. That tension between commercial filmmaking and literary respect defined the entire trilogy's production, resulting in a rare adaptation that satisfied both mainstream audiences and most, if not all, devoted fans of the source material. And there you have it, 14 weird and wonderful facts about the film that launched 1,000 fantasy franchises and made New Zealand tourism skyrocket faster than Gandalf's fireworks. From linguistic obsessions to million-dollar miniatures, The Fellowship of the Ring remains a testament to what happens when filmmakers treat fantasy with deadly seriousness while still having a ridiculous amount of fun. Next time you watch, keep an eye out for that scene where Aragorn deflects a real knife with his birthday sword, and remember that sometimes the most magical movie moments happen entirely by accident. Until next time, remember, not all who watch extended editions are lost. They just have very patient friends.